In the murky depths of Lee County, something stirs. A legend that blurs the line between man and beast. Spanish moss drapes the cypress trees, and the swamp holds secrets older than memory. For nearly 40 years, Bishopville locals have whispered about the lizard man, a creature as much a part of the landscape as the swamp itself. The story is tangled, heavy, and clings to you like the humid southern air. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, the legend pulls you in, full of sharp turns and lingering questions. To understand it, we must step off the road and into the wild, where fact and folklore bleed together. Our journey begins on a sweltering night in 1988, but the roots of this tale run deeper. We'll peel back the layers, one sighting, one footprint, one chilling encounter at a time. Welcome to Palmetto Lore, where the shadows hold secrets and the swamps whisper stories to those brave enough to listen. Scape or swamp isn't just a backdrop, it's a living, breathing character in this legend. In Lee County, this labyrinth of blackwater creeks and ancient cypress trees is both beautiful and forbidding. By day, sunlight dapples the water. By night, the swamp becomes a place of uneasy silence and lurking shadows. Locals respect the swamp, knowing how easy it is to get lost in its shifting, treacherous terrain. Here, imagination runs wild. Every stump could be a monster, every glint of eyes something otherworldly. The swamp's reputation for danger predates the lizard man, its very name shrouded in mystery. A 7-foot reptilian creature seems right at home in this primordial setting, hidden from the modern world. The swamp is the perfect sanctuary for secrets, fueling the legend year after year. To understand the lizard man, you must first respect the swamp's power and mystery. It's the cradle of the legend, reflecting our deepest fears of the unknown. The summer of 1988 in South Carolina was relentless, heat pressing down, nights thick with humidity. In Lee County, the air felt haunted, the cicadas drone a constant reminder of the season's intensity. On June 29th, 17-year-old Christopher Davis finished a late shift at McDonald's and began his drive home. His route skirted the edge of Scape or swamp, a place locals avoided after dark. The road was empty, the darkness absolute, broken only by his headlights. The swamp loomed beside him, its presence heavy and watchful. Chris had driven this way before, but that night the solitude felt different, charged, as if the swamp itself was waiting. He was just a teenager heading home, unaware he was about to become part of a legend. The stage was set, oppressive heat, suffocating darkness, and a sense of isolation. In moments, everything would change. Chris's drive was uneventful, until a sudden bang shattered the silence. A flat tire. He pulled over just feet from the swamp's edge and stepped into the thick, humid night. With only his emergency flashers for light, he worked quickly to change the tire, the world around him eerily still. No cars passed. The isolation was complete. As he tightened the last lug nut, a heavy rustling came from the darkness beyond the ditch. It wasn't a small animal. Something big was moving closer. Chris froze, every sense on high alert, straining to see into the blackness. The crickets fell silent. The air felt charged with anticipation. He tried to dismiss it as a deer or wild hog, but the sound was deliberate, unsettling. Then, closer. Heavy footsteps, unmistakable and approaching. Chris straightened, heart pounding as the unknown crept ever nearer. Something was out there, and it was coming for him. Chris looked up and saw it. A towering figure emerged from the darkness, impossibly tall and wreathed in shadow. As it stepped into the light, its form became clear, a nightmarish fusion of man and reptile, covered in dark green scales. Its eyes glowed red, ancient and unblinking, burning into Chris with a terrifying intelligence. For a moment, the creature stared, then charged with impossible speed. Instinct took over. Chris scrambled into his car, slamming the door and fumbling for the keys. The engine roared to life as the creature reached the vehicle, its massive form filling the window. Chris floored the gas, but not fast enough. The creature leaped onto the roof, claws tearing at the metal. The car swerved wildly as Chris tried to shake it off, the sound of claws scraping above him. For what felt like forever, the monster clung to the roof, trying to rip its way inside. Finally, it lost its grip, sliding off into the darkness as Chris sped away. The encounter was over, but the legend had just begun. The lizard man had made itself known, and nothing in Bishopville would ever be the same. Shaken and terrified, Christopher Davis drove the rest of the way home at a speed that bordered on reckless, his eyes constantly darting to the rearview mirror. He half expected to see those glowing red eyes reappear in the darkness behind him at any moment. When he finally burst through the door of his family's home, his story spilled out in a torrent of panicked words. His parents, seeing the genuine terror etched on their son's face, didn't doubt him for a second. The proof, however, was parked right outside their house. The 1976 Ford LTD was not just a car anymore. It was a piece of evidence. The roof was dented and scratched, with deep, parallel gashes running across the metal, as if something with immense strength and sharp claws had tried to peel it open like a can. The next morning, the Davis family went to the Lee County Sheriff's Office to file a report. They spoke with Sheriff Liston Truesdale, a man who had seen his fair share of strange happenings in the rural county, but nothing quite like this. Initially, he was skeptical, as any seasoned lawman would be. A 7-foot-tall lizard creature attacking a car on a lonely road sounded like something straight out of a low-budget horror movie. But Christopher's testimony was consistent and unwavering, and the physical damage to the car was undeniable. The deep gouges and the ripped side view mirror were not caused by a simple sideswipe or a collision with a deer. The evidence was peculiar and deeply unsettling. What truly made Sheriff Truesdale take the report seriously was a detail from his own files. Just a few weeks prior, another local man, Tom and Mary Way, had reported a bizarre incident. They claimed their vehicle had been viciously attacked and mauled during the night while parked at their home near the edge of the very same swamp. The trim had been chewed on, and the car was covered in scratches and unidentifiable marks. At the time, the incident was logged as a strange case of vandalism, but now, with Christopher Davis's harrowing tale, the two events began to connect, forming a disturbing pattern. It seemed something very aggressive and very unusual was active in the area around Scape or Swamp. The sheriff decided to launch a formal investigation. He and his deputies returned to the scene of Christopher's encounter on Browntown Road. They scoured the roadside and the swamp's edge, searching for any corroborating evidence, footprints, scales, or any other sign of the creature. While they didn't immediately find definitive proof, the seriousness with which the sheriff's office treated the claim was a crucial turning point. This was no longer just a wild story told by a scared teenager. It was now an official police matter. The gears of the legend had begun to turn, and the small, quiet town of Bishopville was about to be thrust into a national spotlight it never saw coming. Once the story hit the local newspaper, The Item, it spread like wildfire. The Associated Press picked it up, and within days, the tale of the lizard man of Scape or Swamp was national news. The initial police report gave the story a veneer of credibility that other monster tales often lacked. This wasn't just folklore. It was a documented event being investigated by law enforcement. Television news crews from across the country descended on the small, unassuming town of Bishopville, their satellite trucks lining the streets. Reporters with microphones and cameras became a common sight, all eager to interview Christopher Davis, Sheriff Truesdale, and any local who had an opinion on the matter. The town of Bishopville, with a population of only a few thousand, was suddenly the epicenter of a full-blown media circus. The phenomenon was quickly dubbed Lizard Man Mania. Local entrepreneurs, never ones to miss an opportunity, sprang into action with surprising speed. Stores that once sold hardware and groceries began stocking bright green t-shirts emblazoned with cartoonish depictions of the creature, often with slogans like, "I survived Scape or Swamp." Souvenir stands popped up along the main roads leading toward the swamp, selling everything from lizard man hats and coffee mugs to plaster casts of hypothetical footprints. The creature had become an overnight cottage industry. This sudden influx of attention brought a wave of tourists and monster hunters to Lee County. Cars with license plates from as far away as California and New York could be seen cruising slowly down Browntown Road, their occupants hoping to catch a glimpse of the now famous cryptid. Armed with cameras, binoculars, and a sense of adventure, these visitors explored the edges of the swamp, much to the amusement and occasional annoyance of the locals. The local radio station, WCOS-FM, even offered a $1 million bounty for the creature's capture, further fueling the frenzy and encouraging amateur hunters to venture into the dangerous wetlands in search of fame and fortune. For the residents of Bishopville, life had changed dramatically. Their quiet town was now inextricably linked with a scaly, 7-foot-tall monster. While some embraced the newfound fame and the economic boost it provided, others were more reserved, wary of the spectacle. The story became the primary topic of conversation in every diner, barbershop, and church gathering. Everyone had a theory, and everyone had an opinion. The lizard man was no longer just a creature of the swamp. It had become a part of the town's identity, a bizarre and unexpected cultural phenomenon that had taken on a life of its own, far beyond the terrifying encounter of one teenager on a dark summer night. As the media frenzy continued to build, the investigation by Sheriff Truesdale's office really started to heat up. The pressure was on to find something, anything, that could either back up or disprove Christopher Davis's story. The breakthrough they were hoping for. Well, it finally came about 2 weeks after the initial incident. Near the river at the edge of the swamp, not too far from where the Way's car had been damaged, deputies stumbled across a series of enormous, unusual tracks in the soft mud. The discovery sent a fresh wave of excitement and a bit of fear through the community. This was the kind of evidence everyone had been waiting for, a physical sign that something truly out of the ordinary was roaming the swamps of Lee County. The footprints were unlike anything the local lawmen or wildlife experts had ever seen. They were just massive, measuring over 14 inches in length and about 6 inches wide. Each print showed 3 large toes, ending in what looked like marks from long claws that had dug deep into the mud. These tracks were clearly non-human, and well, they certainly didn't belong to a bear, which has 5 toes. They were also way too big and shaped differently than any alligator track. The prints seemed to belong to a bipedal creature of considerable weight and size, matching up perfectly with the description of the monster that Christopher Davis had given. Sheriff Truesdale and his team carefully photographed the tracks and, realizing just how important they might be, decided to preserve them. They brought in experts to create plaster casts of the best impressions before rain or footsteps could ruin them. These casts ended up becoming iconic artifacts of the lizard man legend, physical proof that could be held, examined, and debated. When word got out about the footprints, it really silenced a lot of the early skeptics. It's one thing to shrug off a story from a scared teenager, but it's a whole lot harder to ignore a 14-inch, 3-toed footprint that just defies all logical explanation. The cast gave a powerful sense of authenticity to the whole affair. The discovery of the tracks changed everything. The question was no longer just, did a teenager see something strange, but now, what is leaving these prints? The South Carolina Water Resources Division was called in to take a look at the casts, but their official conclusion only deepened the mystery. They said the tracks were unidentifiable and didn't match any known animal. For believers, this was the ultimate validation. For skeptics, it was a frustrating puzzle. The plaster cast became the symbol of the lizard man mystery, solid, mysterious, and open to endless interpretation. They were the footprints of a legend, preserved in plaster for the whole world to see. Of course, not everyone in Bishopville or beyond was ready to believe in a 7-foot-tall reptilian monster. As the legend grew, so did the chorus of skeptical voices, offering more rational, down-to-earth explanations for the strange events. In the diners and hardware stores, right alongside all the excited talk about monster hunting, there were quieter conversations and a lot of raised eyebrows. Many longtime residents, folks who knew the swamp and its ways, were sure there had to be a simpler answer. They argued that the media circus and the sudden flood of outsiders were blowing a simple incident way out of proportion. For every person buying a Lizard Man t-shirt, there was another shaking their head in disbelief at what their quiet town had turned into. The most common theory among skeptics was that the creature was just a misidentified black bear. Bears are native to South Carolina, and they can be big, powerful, and downright scary, especially if you run into one at night. A large bear, standing up on its hind legs to get a better look, could definitely seem massive and frightening to a startled teenager. Proponents of this idea pointed out that a bear could easily do the kind of damage seen on Christopher Davis's car, tearing at the metal with its powerful claws. The glowing red eyes, they said, could simply be eye shine, the reflection of the car's headlights in an animal's eyes, which can look red in the dark. This explanation seemed pretty plausible and grounded in reality, but it didn't quite satisfy everybody. The biggest problem with the bear theory was those footprints. A bear has 5 toes on each paw, not 3. The plaster casts, with their clear 3-toed impressions, just didn't fit the bill. And Christopher Davis himself, he was adamant. He knew what a bear looked like, and what he saw that night was no bear. He described a creature with scales, not fur, and a distinctly reptilian, not mammalian shape. While the bear theory offered a comfortable, logical box to put the mystery in, the details just wouldn't quite fit inside it. Other skeptics turned their attention to the witness himself. They questioned whether a 17-year-old's account, especially after such a scary event on a dark road, could be trusted. Maybe his mind played tricks on him. Maybe he hit a deer, got scared, and his imagination filled in the blanks with images straight out of horror movies. They suggested that the spooky reputation of Scape or swamp could have turned a regular night into a monster encounter in his mind. It was, they said, a classic case of an overactive imagination mixed with the perfect, eerie setting. But even with all that, there was still the matter of the damaged car, and more importantly, those bizarre tracks. With the main theories running into their own problems, the public imagination started to run wild with all sorts of other more creative explanations. One of the most persistent ideas was that the whole lizard man thing was just a big hoax. Some folks speculated that it was a prank pulled off by local kids who had managed to put together a convincing costume. They pictured a bunch of teenagers having a laugh, scaring drivers on those lonely back roads. This could explain the way the creature moved and looked human-like. But, this theory had its own issues. It didn't really account for the sheer strength needed to do the kind of damage seen on the cars or the ability to leap onto a moving vehicle. And who would go to all the trouble to create and leave behind those strange, oversized tracks in the mud? Another, even wilder theory suggested that maybe the creature was an escaped or released pet that had grown huge out in the wild. Some folks pointed to the idea of someone owning a big monitor lizard or even an iguana that got loose and adapted to life in the swamp. The climate in South Carolina could, in theory, support a big reptile. That would explain the scales and the reptilian look. Still, this idea had some big holes in it. No known lizard walks on 2 legs the way Davis described, and none of them grow to be over 7 feet tall. The glowing red eyes and the aggressive, smart behavior also just didn't fit with any known runaway pets. Then there were those who thought the answer wasn't in biology at all, but in the way people think and tell stories. They saw the lizard man legend as a kind of modern folklore, a story created by a community to explain the unexplainable, to give a face to the deep-down fears that come with the wild, dark places. In this view, the lizard man wasn't a real creature, but a cultural cryptid, a monster born from collective anxiety and our need for a good story. The media, they argued, just made everything bigger, turning a small-town tale into a national sensation. The creature was real, but only in the minds of the folks who told and heard the story. In the end, none of these skeptical theories could quite tie up all the loose ends. The bear theory couldn't explain the tracks. The hoax theory couldn't account for the strength. The escaped pet idea didn't fit with biology. And while the folklore explanation was compelling, it didn't explain the real physical evidence, the damaged cars and those plaster casts of the footprints. So, the debate raged on, creating this fascinating deadlock between the believers and the doubters. Each side held firm to its story, leaving the true identity of the lizard man of Scape or swamp cloaked in a thick, impenetrable fog of mystery. As the excitement of 1988 began to swirl around Bishopville, the lizard man story started to pull older, half-forgotten tales out from the shadows of memory. The intense focus on Christopher Davis's encounter acted like a magnet, drawing out stories that had been quietly lingering in the community for decades. Suddenly, the creature didn't feel like a new phenomenon. Instead, it seemed like the reemergence of something that had always been there, just beneath the surface. The old-timers, who had watched the media circus with a knowing look in their eyes, began to speak up in barbershops and on front porches, sharing their own strange memories of the swamp and its mysterious inhabitants. They spoke of things seen and heard long before anyone had ever coined the name Lizard Man. These older stories, stretching back to the 1950s and even earlier, painted a consistent, eerie picture. They were tales of swamp men or bog monsters, shadowy figures glimpsed at a distance through the thick veils of Spanish moss. Farmers would talk about strange guttural growls echoing through the fog just before dawn, sounds that didn't belong to any known animal. Hunters would recall moments of unsettling silence in the woods, the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, a primal sense that would send them packing up their gear and heading for home earlier than planned. These were not dramatic, headline-grabbing encounters, but quiet, unsettling moments that were often dismissed or kept within the family, filed away as strange tricks of the light or sound. The details of these older accounts were often vague, passed down through generations and softened by time. Yet, they contained familiar echoes. Descriptions of a large, upright creature moving with surprising speed through the dense undergrowth were common threads. Some tales mentioned its unusual strength, connecting it to unexplained damage to property or livestock found near the swamp's edge. These historical whispers suggested that the creature Christopher Davis saw was not an isolated anomaly, but perhaps a descendant or even the very same being that had been patrolling the boundaries of Scape or swamp for generations. The legend, it seemed, had roots that ran much deeper than anyone initially suspected. This connection to the past gave the Lizard Man's story a new layer of depth and credibility for many locals. It transformed it from a singular, bizarre event into a piece of ongoing, living folklore. The creature was no longer just a monster. It was a part of the region's hidden history, a guardian or resident spirit of the swamp that occasionally made its presence known to the human world. It seemed the Lizard Man had been here long before the television cameras arrived, a silent, scaly witness to the changing world outside his primordial home. The whispers from the past confirmed a chilling thought. This was not the first time the creature had emerged, and it likely would not be the last. After the initial blaze of publicity in the summer of 1988, the sightings began to dwindle. As autumn arrived, bringing cooler weather, the media packed up their vans and the tourists went home. The Lizard Man seemed to have retreated back into the deepest, most inaccessible corners of the swamp, scared off by the intense scrutiny or perhaps simply following some unknown seasonal cycle. For nearly 2 decades, Scape or swamp fell quiet. The legend lived on in t-shirts and local lore, but the creature itself remained silent. Bishopville returned to its peaceful existence, the memory of its summer of madness slowly fading into a peculiar chapter of its history. The world moved on, and the Lizard Man became a relic of the 80s. Then in February of 2008, the monster returned. A couple in Bishopville, Bob and Dixie Rawson, awoke one morning to a scene of inexplicable destruction in their yard. Their minivan had been savaged during the night. The vehicle was covered in deep scratches. The chrome trim was peeled back as if it were foil, and the front grille was mangled. Even more bizarrely, there were clear teeth marks on the wheel arches, suggesting something had been chewing on the metal. The Rawsons reported they had also found some of their family cats dead nearby. The damage was eerily reminiscent of the attacks from 20 years prior, a violent signature that was all too familiar to the people of Lee County. The Rawson incident was a jolt that reawakened the dormant legend. It proved that the Lizard Man was not just a one-time event or a figment of 1980s hysteria. The story immediately made headlines again, and a new generation was introduced to the terrifying tale of South Carolina's most famous cryptid. Law enforcement was once again called to investigate, and Sheriff E.J. Melvin, who now held Liston Truesdale's old post, found himself dealing with the same bizarre questions that had plagued his predecessor. The case reignited local fears and fascination, with many believing the creature had finally emerged from its long hibernation, returning to its old stomping grounds. This reemergence solidified the Lizard Man's status as an enduring mystery, rather than a fleeting fad. The 2008 attack was followed by a smattering of other reports over the next few years. People claimed to see a tall, dark figure darting across roads late at night, or hear strange, unearthly screams coming from the direction of the swamp. While none of these new sightings were as dramatic as Christopher Davis's original encounter, they served as periodic reminders that something was still out there. The legend refused to die, kept alive by these sporadic, unsettling events that ensured the Lizard Man would never be fully relegated to the past. He was, it seemed, a permanent resident. As the legend carried on into the 21st century, it entered a new phase, fueled by the rise of the internet and social media. The lizard man was no longer confined to local newspapers and television reports. He now had a global stage. Every new potential sighting, no matter how flimsy, could be shared instantly around the world, dissected by online communities of cryptid hunters, paranormal enthusiasts, and skeptics. The story found a powerful new life online, where blurry photographs and shaky videos could be analyzed frame by frame, sparking endless debate and speculation. The monster of Scape or swamp had officially gone digital, and his legend grew larger and more complex with every click and share. The most significant event of this new era came in 2015. A local woman named Sarah Barra claimed to have captured a photograph of the lizard man with her smartphone as it ran across a tree line near the swamp. The image she shared showed a dark, muscular, bipedal figure with a long tail, its form matching the classic descriptions. The photo went viral almost immediately, spreading through news sites and social media platforms like a digital wildfire. It was the first new piece of visual evidence in years, and it reignited lizard man mania for a new generation. The photo was compelling enough to be intriguing, but ambiguous enough to be endlessly debatable. Shortly after Barra's photo surfaced, another piece of media emerged. A man who wished to remain anonymous released a short video clip he claimed to have filmed in the swamp a few months earlier. The video, though shaky and brief, appeared to show a tall, dark figure moving through the trees. He said he had been hesitant to share it, but Barra's photo encouraged him to come forward. These two pieces of media, appearing so close together, created a perfect storm of renewed interest. Debunkers quickly dismissed the images, with many suggesting the figure in the photo was simply a man in a very well-made lizard costume, possibly a promotional stunt for a local event or a deliberate hoax. Regardless of their authenticity, these digital artifacts cemented the lizard man's place in modern monster lore. They demonstrated how a local legend could adapt and thrive in the age of technology. Drone operators began flying their crafts over Scape or swamp, hoping to capture definitive aerial footage. Paranormal investigation shows featured the legend in their episodes, bringing ghost hunting equipment to the swamp's edge. The story was no longer just told around campfires. It was discussed in forums, on podcasts, and in YouTube comment sections. The lizard man had successfully made the leap from a rural mystery to a global internet phenomenon, ensuring his strange and terrifying story would continue to evolve and captivate audiences for years to come. When all the evidence has been examined, the theories debated, and the eyewitness accounts scrutinized, we are still left with the central, unavoidable question. Is the lizard man of Scape or swamp real? Is there truly a 7-foot-tall bipedal reptile lurking in the murky wetlands of Lee County? The honest answer is that we simply do not know. For every piece of compelling evidence, like the plaster casts of the tracks, there is a plausible counter-argument. For every terrified witness, there is a skeptic offering a more mundane explanation. The lizard man exists in a fascinating gray area between documented fact and imaginative folklore, a space where belief is a matter of personal choice rather than definitive proof. But perhaps the question of whether the creature is physically real is not the most important one to ask. Real or not, the lizard man has undeniably become a vital part of Bishopville's cultural identity. He is more than just a monster. He is a local icon, a brand, and a source of community pride. The story has put the small town on the map, drawing in visitors and media attention that it would have never otherwise received. The legend has been woven into the fabric of the town's character, appearing on murals painted on the sides of buildings, on festival banners, and on the merchandise sold in local shops. The creature has become a mascot for the wild, untamed spirit of the South Carolina Lowcountry. This demonstrates the incredible power of a story. A good story can do more than just entertain. It can shape a community's identity and bind people together. In Bishopville, the tale of the lizard man provides a shared narrative, a piece of local lore that belongs to everyone. It gives residents a common point of reference, a unique claim to fame that sets their home apart from any other small town in America. It fosters a sense of wonder and excitement, turning a dark and foreboding swamp into a place of adventure and possibility. The legend has become a tradition, passed down from one generation to the next, evolving with each telling but always retaining its mysterious core. Ultimately, The lizard man serves as a powerful reminder that stories are essential to the human experience. They help us make sense of the world, give voice to our fears, and celebrate the unknown. Whether the creature is made of flesh and scales or simply of whispered words and shared imagination, its impact is tangible. It has transformed a place, sparked a global conversation, and created a lasting legacy. The legend of the lizard man proves that a story, when it takes root in the fertile ground of a community's heart, can grow into something as real and enduring as the ancient cypress trees of the swamp itself. In our modern, hyper-connected world, it often feels as though every corner of the globe has been mapped, cataloged, and explained. With satellites watching from above and scientific knowledge expanding every day, the space for true mystery seems to be shrinking. We have answers for almost everything available at the touch of a button. Yet, the legend of the lizard man persists, a stubborn and delightful anomaly in an age of certainty. It stands as a powerful testament to the fact that there are still shadows on the map, places left wild and untamed, and phenomena that stubbornly defy our attempts to categorize and comprehend them. The swamp holds its secrets close. The endurance of this legend speaks to a deep-seated human need for the unknown. We are fascinated by the idea that there might be more to this world than meets the eye. The possibility of an undiscovered species, a survivor from a prehistoric age, or something even stranger, ignites our imagination and sense of wonder. The lizard man represents the thrill of the unexplained. He is a monster that lives not in a distant, exotic land, but right here in our own backyard, just beyond the glow of our streetlights. This proximity makes the mystery all the more potent and personal, a constant reminder that the wilderness is never as far away as we might think. This enduring mystery also serves as a check on our own arrogance. It reminds us that humanity does not have all the answers and that nature is still full of surprises. The unidentifiable tracks and the consistent eyewitness accounts challenge our neat and tidy understanding of the natural world. They force us to consider possibilities that lie outside the realm of established science. This element of doubt is healthy. It encourages curiosity, inspires investigation, and keeps us from becoming complacent in our knowledge. The lizard man is a puzzle without a solution, and that is precisely what makes him so captivating. The mystery itself is the point. So while cryptid hunters continue to search for definitive proof and skeptics continue to search for definitive explanations, the legend itself thrives in the space between. The story of the lizard man will likely never be completely solved, and that is its greatest strength. It will continue to be told and retold, adapting to new generations and new technologies, but always retaining its core element of profound, unsettling mystery. It is a mystery that belongs not just to Bishopville, but to anyone who has ever looked into the darkness and wondered what might be looking back, reminding us that the world is, and always will be, a wonderfully mysterious place. So what is the lizard man in the end? Is he a cryptid, an undiscovered species waiting for its scientific classification? Is he a supernatural entity, a spirit of the swamp made manifest? Or is he perhaps a product of our collective imagination, a modern folktale born from fear and fascination? Maybe the answer is a combination of all these things. The lizard man has become a symbol, a reflection of something deep within ourselves and our relationship with the wild world. He is the personification of the swamp's raw, primal energy, a guardian of a place that modern society has tried but failed to completely tame. In a way, the lizard man represents a kind of natural rebellion. He emerges from the depths of the swamp to claw at our cars, to tear at our property, to remind us that we are merely visitors in his domain. The encounters are almost always on the border between the human world and the natural world, on a lonely road, at the edge of a yard, near a riverbank. It is as if he is patrolling a boundary, a scaly sentinel warning us not to encroach too far into the territory he protects. He is a physical embodiment of nature's power and its resistance to being paved over and forgotten, a fierce and frightening reminder that the wild still has teeth. So the next time you find yourself on a quiet road in the South Carolina Lowcountry, perhaps near Lee County, take a moment. Roll down your windows and listen. Listen past the sound of your own engine to the chorus of the cicadas and the croaking of the frogs. Feel the heavy, humid air on your skin and look into the deep, inky blackness of the trees. Think about the stories and the history that the land holds, and if you hear a sudden rustling in the reeds or see a pair of glowing eyes reflecting in the dark, try not to be afraid. Don't run. Don't scream. Just offer a small, respectful smile. You might be in the presence of a legend, because in Scape or Swamp, the lizard man is king. He is the keeper of the secrets, the shadow among the cypress trees, and the enduring mystery that haunts the heart of Palmetto Lore. And in his world, it is not he who is the strange creature intruding on civilization. It is you who is the mystery, a fleeting visitor passing through a land that is ancient, wild, and forever his.